Hello, everyone. It's another fresh and exciting episode on the show. As you guys know, I only bring top guests to my show. And once again, we have a very special guest today, as always, on the show, Hidden Secrets in Books. Today's guest is obviously an author. Yeah, she's an author. Her name is Diana Gunn. Diana, welcome to the show.
It's nice to be here.
All right, Diana, I would like you to do the honors of introducing yourself to my audience.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am Diana Gunn. I write fantasy and horror. My most recent release was Woman of Sorrow and Blood, which is a gothic sapphic tragedy, and it came out back in March of 2026, so very recently. I have a few other books out, including Choices, an anthology of reproductive horror, and the Moonshadow Rising duology, which is a complete series, two books, and those were my original novels. Those are dark fantasy rather than horror. So I've bounced around a fair bit between dark fantasy and horror, and I love them both. And I also run a community for writers called Weeknight Writers, where we host a bunch of different virtual events.
Thank you so much, Diana. So, you knew you wanted to be an author at 8 years old. Tell us what sparked that dream and what kept you pursuing it.
So when I was a kid, I didn't really think that writing books could be like your job. When I was a little kid, I thought it was just like something like old people did when they were like retired or, like on their way out. I didn't really think like young people could be writers or have that be their career. And then when I realized that writing could actually be a career, it was sort of this lightning spark moment, and I just knew that was what I wanted to do. I was like, that's the coolest thing ever, and that's what I want for my life, and I've never wavered from that.
All right, Diana. So, what inspired you to found Weeknight Writers? And what gap were you hoping to fill for writers?
So originally, Weeknight Writers started as a Twitter chat, and really it was because there were a bunch of Twitter chats for writers, but a lot of them were actually in UK time. So they happened while I was working, and I was like, I want a chat that's in the evening that's, good for my time zone, because the only other chat that was in North American time was in Pacific time, and I'm in Eastern time. So it was, it would start at like 9 o'clock for me. And I was like, I want something that's, in the earlier evening. So I started Weeknight Writers as that chat to sort of fill that gap initially for other folks who are looking to have community that and have these conversations within, that evening time gap in our time zone. And then it sort of grew from there. 2020 hit, everything went online, and I was like, it would be really cool to do like a bigger event, like a virtual conference, because I'd been building this community for quite a while at this point. The chat was very active. We had a Discord server, and I brought on my friend Jade, and we ran our first virtual conference. It went incredibly well, and we've continued running these virtual events. To this day, we've run, I believe, over a dozen conferences, because there was a point where we were doing a couple every year. We've hosted a ton of panels. We have a Discord server where folks can hang out and have accountability and community. And it's really about the accessibility of online space, because, you know, physical writing conferences are great, but they're really difficult for a lot of people to get to. If you don't live in the city where it's happening, you need to travel there, you need to pay for a hotel or, whatever lodging. You need to uh, book the time off. All of these things make it so inaccessible to a lot of writers who, might live in the middle of nowhere, and so it's really expensive. Or maybe they have just busy lives, they have job and kids, and they simply can't get away for that long. So that's sort of why we're in this space creating the events that we do, is that we want, educational and community support to be available to writers who don't live in big cities and can't necessarily get to the places where the big conferences and workshops are.
All right. Diana, why do you focus on visual events and what advantages do they offer writers around the world?
So I mean, like I said before, the main thing is accessibility. Is you can hop on a virtual event without having to take a bunch of time off of work, or spend a ton of money on traveling, or taking time away from your family and your other obligations, instead of having to be like, okay, if this conference is on the other side of the world, I'm going to need a whole extra day of travel time, plus conference time, plus another day of travel time to get home. And if you've got a family, and that's a lot to ask. So it's really just about making it accessible to the broadest range of people. And also, something that's really cool about running virtual events is that we can have people from all over the world. We've had panelists from Taiwan, New Zealand, lots of panelists from the UK, and panelists from Portugal, all over the world. And it's really cool. These are people that we wouldn't get to connect with. We can't afford to pay to fly these people out here, and it's so expensive that a lot of the time, even the folks who are more well off, they still can't afford to fly all the way across the country and take all of that time. But they can stay up a little bit later than usual in their time zone so that they can make it to a panel in my time zone. And that's so cool to be able to bring in these voices from so many different places.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana. So writer's block is something almost every writer faces, including myself. What causes it, and how can people work through it?
So there are actually many different causes of writer's block. What I like to say is that writer's block is a symptom. But what it's a symptom of varies. Sometimes it's a symptom of something going on in your own life. Maybe you're burnt out, maybe you're dealing with depression, maybe you're just too busy and you haven't quite acknowledged those things yet, and you need to sit with yourself and really analyze your life. And sometimes it's a problem with your story. Maybe there's something that in the scene that you're currently working on that isn't working. Maybe it's a character that's acting out of character, or the scene isn't taking the story where it needs to go. Maybe the scene needs to be modified. Maybe it needs to be killed completely. Or, maybe there's a bigger problem with more of your story arc. And the key to defeating writer's block is to figure out what that root problem is, whether it's something going on in your life outside of writing or something in the writing itself. I've actually created a tool called the Writer's Blockbuster. It's based on the journaling process I've used for about 20 years now and spent that whole time refining to overcome my own writer's block. And it is entirely about drilling down and finding the cause of your writer's block. Because I've found that once I know the cause of my current bout of writer's block, once I know what is blocking me, the solution almost always comes naturally from knowing that. Like the diagnosis leads directly to the cure. Whether that's I need to actually take a break and cut myself some slack, or I need to change how I'm approaching this scene, or I need to actually rework a major portion of my story. And the Writer's Blockbuster is free on the Weeknight Writers website, so folks can access that at any time. It's a really quick workbook. There's two sections, one for the mental health, one for the story stuff. You can do both or one of them, and you can answer as many questions as it takes to find your solution, whether that's one question or all of them. So there's really a lot of flexibility there.
All right. So, what makes Weeknight Writers different from other writing communities?
I think a lot of it is just how active and supportive our members are. I've spent a lot of time bouncing in and out of other writing communities, and some things like NaNoWriMo, may it rest in peace, were very active during a certain point of the year because they were built around this challenge. But then as soon as the challenge ended, the community started to dwindle down and there were only a couple hangers on throughout the year. Some things, were active for like a few months and then sort of started to peter off, but very few of those communities lasted more than a year, or if they did, they sort of lasted as those shadows of themselves. Whereas Weeknight Writers, we just keep growing. We have people in there chatting pretty much all day, every day. We've got folks across a few different time zones, so whatever time you're on, there's a decent chance you're going to encounter someone. And I've been really blessed. I'm very committed to moderating the community if I need to and to ousting people who are jerks, but I've never had to. Everyone that we've had in the community has been so supportive, so kind to other writers, so eager to be in community and to collaborate and to help each other out, whether that's through holding each other accountable, helping each other work on ideas. We actually just launched an e-zine, so we're going to be opening for submissions for that soon as of this recording. And it's just so cool to see how engaged everyone is, to see that, this has been going on we launched this iteration of the community, a bunch of dedicated folks that have made it far more nurturing and valuable year-round than any other year-round and year after year than any other writing community I've participated in.
All right. So, what advice would you give someone who just started their Facebook?
Oh goodness. I mean, there's so many things I could say. One thing is, let yourself write badly. You're going to write badly at first, and often there's a really big struggle at first between what's in your head and what actually comes out on the page, because it's so much prettier in your head, and you've got to learn how to work with the words, and that's a process that doesn't happen on your first draft of your first book. So give yourself permission to write your first draft of your first book really messy. Just get it on the page, because you'll learn so much from that experience. And once it's on the page, you can also go back to it and you can see where the flaws are. You can learn how to improve from there, whether you decide you're going to edit that book itself or move on to writing something new with the skills you've learned. It's so powerful to write that first book and just let it come out in whatever shape it comes out and figure the rest out later. The other thing I would say is it's really important to find your people. Writing can be really isolating and it can be really hard. A lot of people in your real life aren't gonna get it. They're gonna think it's weird or crazy that you're spending all of this time doing this thing. They're not going to understand the highs and lows of the creative process. So it's really important to connect with other writers, whether that's finding a local writing group in your own city, whether that's being on social media sites, like a lot of publishing now, a lot of writers have shifted from Twitter to Blue Sky. That's actually where we run the Weeknight Writers chat now on Thursday evenings from 7 to 9 p.m. EST. So You can join that chat totally free. There's a few other writing chats on Blue Sky as well. You can find community that way. Or if you want something that's more structured and more robust, you can join a more structured community like the Weeknight Writers Discord, which is a premium membership, but we've got a lot to offer. And there are many different communities that offer sort of different styles of writing community. So you can bounce around between a few of them to figure out what you like, how much structure you want, what kinds of writers you want to connect with. Our community is mostly sci-fi, fantasy, and horror writers. We've got a couple oddballs in there that write, romance or mystery or whatever, but it's really concentrated on those genres. So you might want to find a different community if you work in different genres, but test a few things out, check out a few different places, and find your people, because having those people who will actually understand your wins and cheer for you when you have those wins, people who will understand the struggles and the setbacks and commiserate with you, and folks you can bounce ideas off of when you're really stuck on a part of your story, that is the most invaluable thing in the world. All of the most famous writers had someone else look at their writing. No one writes in a vacuum as much as we like to picture writers working isolated in a room with nothing but a laptop that has no internet connection. Every writer needs other writers. So find them, reach out, and your experience of writing and also the quality of your writing itself will become so much better, so much faster.
Okay, Diana. So, what should writers know before pursuing traditional publishing, and how can they improve their chances of success?
So I am mostly self-published. So I'm maybe not the best person to ask about traditional publishing, but I have spent a fair amount of time researching it, and there are some folks in the Weeknight Writers community who either are pursuing traditional publishing or have been traditionally published. So I have a decent idea of how it works, and the main thing is it takes a lot of time and you're going to have to deal with a lot of rejection. Pretty certainly. I mean, even so, there are also multiple layers of traditional publishing. There are independent publishers who are, they might publish 1 or 2 books a year. They might publish 15 books a year. But they're not massive corporations. They're fairly small, tight-knit teams. And they will sometimes take submissions directly from authors. But if you want to get published by the really big imprints, the corporate publishers, effectively, you're going to need to get an agent first. And even some of the bigger independent publishers do require you to have an agent, which means you can spend anywhere from 3 months to 3 years searching for that agent, collecting rejections along the way. And then once that agent accepts you, they then have to shop it around to editors, and you can get dozens more rejections from editors, and it can take another year or two. And then once you have an editor, it can still take another year or two before the book is actually published. So the main thing is that you're going to have to be really patient. You're going to have to expect a lot of rejection and be prepared for that. And to make your chances better, just really spend a lot of time reading about traditional publishing, learning from agents and editors what they're looking for, learning from other writers who are traditionally published. A lot of writers are very happy to talk about their journey, even share examples of the query letters they've used before. In the Weeknight Writers community, we do, like I said, have some folks who are more interested in the trad route. And there's a couple folks in particular who are always very happy to help with queries and stuff like that. And there's plenty more on Blue Sky as well. Like, writers are very happy, for the most part, to uplift new writers and to show you examples of what works and to look at your query letter and to help you build something that is going to be appealing to a traditional publisher.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana. Thank you for sharing your journey and encouraging writers to keep creating, keep learning, and keep believing in their stories. Your passion for building community is making a real difference for authors around the world. To everyone listening, be sure to check out Diana Gunn's book and learn more about Weeknight Writers. So, Diana, how can listeners connect with you and be able to check out your book as well?
So my books you can all find at authordianagunn.com. That's Diana with two N's and Gunn with two N's. You can also follow me directly on Blue Sky at Diana L. Gunn. And as for Weeknight Writers, you can check us out at weeknightwriters.com. If you want the Writers Blockbuster, that's at weeknightwriters.com/writersblockbuster. And you can also follow Weeknight Writers on Blue Sky at Weeknight Writers and get a glimpse of what we do. And if you're in a time zone where it works out, maybe join us for the chat on Thursday nights. They happen pretty much every Thursday from 7 to 9 p.m. EST, and we have a lot of fun. It's totally free. It's a great way to dip your toes into the community and see what we're about.
All right. Thank you so much, Diana. I really appreciate you for coming and for sharing your perspective and insights with me and my audience.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Have a wonderful day.
You too.
Bye.